Rosalind's got her microphone on. Okay, so that's the recording started, and as well as the recording, there's also a transcription. So you'll be able to get the text for this as well, which also means that you'll be able to see subtitles if you watch it back. So I'll subtitle the recordings as well. So as I said, today is a kind of introductory lesson. And so that you know the format, this is for UWS students what we... Now, I know that I didn't say ALEXA at that point. So I think that stupid machine can just keep quiet for now. Yeah, what would we call this at UWS a half module? It's 10 points if you get academic credit. So what that means is quite often we will run them just over 6 weeks. Because we are online, I've changed that. So we're running this over 12 weeks. So it's basically now until December. The idea being that rather than give you lots and lots of information in huge chunks, we'll have shorter meetings, specifically these 2-hour ones. And that means that between each meeting, you've got an opportunity to reflect and think about what we've been doing. So let me tell you about the module. Oh, that would have been so much slicker if my computer had actually done that just as I said, let's look at the module. I was that close to just being... I'll do it again. Let's look at the module. As you know, this is Governance, Risk Management and Compliance, GRC. And it's interesting that we have a split class today. As I said, we've got some people from the MSc and some people from Commerce. And part of the reason I say it's interesting is quite often the question I get from my academic students is, why are we doing this? And I think the fact that we've got 10 people who decided to join this class to progress their careers says exactly why we're doing this. Governance, risk and compliance is key to all sorts of organizations these days. And the larger the organization gets, the more embedded it is in all of the processes. So what actually is it? It is a way of putting a framework in place. GRC isn't anything new. Well, at least for well-organized organizations and well-run organizations, GRC isn't anything new. It's not a surprise that organizations need to be governed. That shouldn't be news to anyone. It shouldn't be a surprise that organizations have to look at their risks. Again, shouldn't be a surprise if you're not looking at your risks in an organization, then you're not doing your job properly. And it particularly shouldn't be a surprise that legislative compliance is a key part of any organization. GRC as a subject isn't about new stuff. It's about proving that you do the stuff that you already do. So it's not about saying, see that big 30-foot ladder, go take a wee run up there and try not to fall off. That's not risk management. Risk management is saying, you are going to be using a ladder. Here's the things that you have to do. You know, have somebody at the bottom to hold the ladder. Make sure you've got a safety rope. Make sure the ladder's okay. But also importantly, it's about recording that you've done that. That it's written down somewhere that somebody had proper training. that it's written down somewhere that you're going to follow the legislative framework that you belong to and that you have followed that. And it's about understanding what your organization is supposed to be doing and making sure that everyone, both within the organization and those that you do business with, also understand it. And again, sometimes the question I get asked for someone that's doing cybersecurity is, why do you care? Well, I happen to think that learning everything's great, but if you want more concrete information, for those of you that are doing cybersecurity, you're in the IT mode of doing things. IT is not a separate department answerable to no one. IT is embedded into the organization. Everything you do in IT must conform to the rules. And if you're here from another organization and you're coming from a different type of department, that applies as well. You're not a separate division. You're part of an overall organization. So all of the stuff that we do in here about compliance and risk and governance applies to IT, applies to HR, applies to accounts, applies to every part of the organization. And for those of you who are doing cybersecurity and who are going into an IT role, the recording part, the bit that I've just said, where we record everything that we're doing so that we can prove that we have complied with all these things, even if, as things do, they inevitably go wrong, we can prove that we've done things. Now, 20 years ago, a company that I worked with had ISO, they had ISO quality standards built into their model. They were manufacturers and they needed to prove that what they were doing conformed to all the standards, worked well, all that kind of stuff. And the way that they did that was they had one person who was the ISO guy. And he had a very small office that was absolutely covered in bookshelves. And those bookshelves had box files. And in those box files was every single form, every single piece of training, every single rule that everyone had to follow within that organization. But that was 20 years ago. These things tend to be computer-based now. So again, for the IT people, that's particularly where you come in. You're quite often tasked with running these systems and making sure that you're recording all this stuff properly. So let me give you an example. Before I do that, I'm not seeing any questions. I'm keeping an eye on the chat up there. I'm not seeing any questions. So if you have questions, again, put them in the chat, put your hand up, just speak. But I'm assuming we're all happy. I'll move on. I'll talk about the director of an organization. Now, a director is a specific role and it has legislative consequences. In other words, you're responsible for the organization, legally responsible. And there are different areas where you're legally responsible, and it might be financial. If your organization loses money, again, an organization that I was involved with had an issue with finance. Somebody phoned up the finance office and said, "Hello, I'm the financial controller of XYZ company. I just need to update our details." And the person at the end of the phone went, "No problem. What would you like to change?" And they said, "We've got new banking details. Can I give you a new sort code and account number for all the payments that you're making to us?" And the person in the organization went, "Yes, of course you can." and recorded those in the financial system. So, for the next 8 to 10 weeks, in other words, until the organisation that they were meant to be paying noticed and asked what was going on, payments were made to a false bank account, and that organisation lost over £250,000. So can anyone suggest what went wrong in that kind of transaction, in that example?
I think the person who took the new details didn't verify its source. It's like a news outlet publishing news that they didn't verify whether it's true or not. So definitely as a partner company or as a company who provides services to another, you should, when you get a call like that, you should also check your records and check who is on record as a financial manager and verify that that was the person who made the call, just to do due diligence.
Absolutely, and it's no different to any one of us receiving a call on our mobile saying, hello, we represent company X. So if you are that organisation, how do you embed that into your processes to make sure that that doesn't happen? What rules do you put in place? Lorraine, you get your hand up.
But I was just going to say, because there was no process in place, so I would have thought there would need to be some sort of process to say this is the steps you take. And if you do get a call like that, then there needs to be steps to like verify what you can and can't do in that position.
Yeah,
To mitigate the risk of that happening.
absolutely. So do you want to suggest what those processes might be, or some of them at least?
Something maybe like if you were changing bank account details, you would need to send it in writing, a signature, or a certain person level in the organization is the only one that, like an administrator or that would be able to make that change, some rule that you can only make that change if you are at a certain level and it has to be in writing, something like that in a process.
Yep, that sounds like a reasonable approach. Any other approaches that you or anyone else wants to suggest?
There should be also what is called PII, personal identification information, embedded into the system of the organization for verification, like what you have, what you do, like sending the details. Okay, what was the last contact you made, so that we can contact you via phone. Okay, we send a confirmation to you through the phone, acknowledge it, then we can be sure that this is the person that actually make this call. Then we can match that with the existing information, so that with that we are sure that we are talking to the right person.
So that's the general case of two-factor authentication that Lorraine's talking about. So you're talking about getting a clear note that this is the right person. Any other suggestions? Anthony?
Yeah, another thing you can always do with such in the process is to check. Those checks will help you to be able to make sure that that request aligns with company policy, aligns with the bigger picture, and that you're doing that with, in terms of those compliance or regulatory information. So at the back of what the previous speakers mentioned, so you usually have a thing called um, internal control checks. So if you do that, that will be able to spot any pitfalls within the process, and that will be able to make sure that there is an adaptability of the new change to a new process.
Yep. And of course, one of those checks might be, can someone else verify this? So in the example I gave you, one relatively junior member of staff took the call, made the change, and nobody approved it. £250,000 and nobody had oversight. Now, in this particular case, that was unfortunate, it was an accident, but how easy would that be for someone to get a job in that organisation at very low level and suddenly be given the power to change banking details? How much could they scam in a week before they disappeared? So if you're in charge of an organisation, if you are a director, you're responsible for those types of financial issues. If you have, now, part of the reason I keep saying organisation is that these principles apply whether you're a business, whether you're a public sector organisation, whether you're a charity, whether you're a club. It really doesn't matter. So I'll keep saying organisation, but you can think about it in any kind of context that applies to you or that makes you feel comfortable. So if you are a business, you have to sign off the accounts. So you have to say this is a true recording of what we've spent, what we've got in, and the financial position of this company. The directors have to sign that off, and if they get it wrong, they can be held liable for getting it wrong. The same sort of thing happens with public sector organisations. If you get a health authority, you'll see that the chair of the health board and the chief executive yearly provide accounts, and they'll be in the front of them saying this is what we are doing, and they've signed it off, and they are also held responsible. So that's financial duties. The other one is one that I always mispronounce, is fiduciary. I almost got it that time, duties. And that's saying you are part of the organisation. So the decisions you make are on behalf of the organisation, not on behalf of yourself or on behalf of any other organisation that you happen to belong to. So that person in the ladder I was speaking about earlier is a window cleaner. How did they get the window cleaning job? Was it because the person in charge of hiring a window cleaner happens to know that their brother-in-law cleans windows and decided to give them the contract? Now, if the brother-in-law got the contract because they went out to tender, got bids on cleaning the windows, and the bid that came in from cleaning the windows was the best bid, and it just happened to be the brother-in-law, well, that's fine. Nobody should be punished. But if they got the job simply because they happened to know that their brother-in-law cleaned windows and wanted to give them the work, that is not acceptable. So the first duty is to the organisation. And directors, some of whom can be directors of more than one organisation. So, for example, in the past, I have been on the board of or more than one organisation at once. But I cannot take a decision based on what I think would be correct for the other organisation with which I'm involved. I have to take a decision based on the organisation for which I'm taking that decision. So it's organisation before individual or other organisations. And as I say, if you do these things wrong, that's a legislative issue. You're breaking the law. So all of these things where if you act incorrectly for financial reasons, for health and safety reasons, for whatever reasons, you're breaking the law and can be held to account. Now, there are plenty of people that say, not enough. All of the financial irregularities in 2008, for example, not a single person in the UK was prosecuted, although in other countries they were. So the amount of enforcement is a whole other discussion, but the framework is there. So that's part of what you have to do if you're in charge of an organisation. You have to be diligent in what you're doing. And how do you then prove that? How do you say, yes, my brother-in-law got this window cleaning contract and it's absolutely fine? Well, if you've got a document that says we need window cleaners, you've got a document that says this is the sort of thing that the window cleaner has to do. They have to clean the windows on these 3 buildings, which have up to 4 stories. The cleaning must happen at least once a week. They must be able to fulfill that contract for at least a year. So you get that bit of paper. You then put it out to contract, and you then get another bit of paper ranking all the people who have applied for that contract. Oh, here's wee Shuggy. He goes around on his bike with a step ladder. He clearly can't reach up to the 4th story. Therefore, that tender's not compliant. And you mark why that tender's not compliant. You say, no, they're not getting the job. Or you might have 3 tenders that are compliant. They've got enough staff, they've got the materials, they know what they're doing. Then you're down to price. And you can say, look, we did it. It was a sealed bid. This was the cheapest one. They got the deal. So if you have that record showing you what's happened with that tender, or you have that record showing you what happened with the health and safety training, it means that when things go wrong, and you'll notice I didn't say if things go wrong, because things always go wrong to a greater or lesser extent. What you can say when things go wrong is, yes, I absolutely understand there was an issue, but we did our best. We did everything right. We did this, and we did this, and we followed that step, and we did this one. We will certainly learn from this, but there is no reason to punish us further because we did everything that we could. We followed best industry practice. We did everything we were supposed to do according to the law. But accidents happen. Problems happen. So part of governance is keeping that, part of GRC is keeping that framework, knowing what the framework is, knowing what the procedures are, and showing that they've been followed. And clearly, for the example that I gave where the bank details were changed, there was no process. Therefore, it couldn't be followed. Therefore, people lost a lot of money. So that's for people that are in charge. What if you're not in charge? What if you're just? What if you're an employee? Well, here's an example. It's from America. And actually, I chose an American example for a reason. So this particular example is about someone who's in IT. And in essence, the guy was fired. And before he went, he thought, stuff it, and deleted all the files, deleted all the backups. Now, he clearly shouldn't have done it. Clearly, that was not correct. But here's the thing. He shouldn't have been able to do it. They got the process wrong. The process should not be, you are fired, now let's take away your badge and take away your key and take away your password to the computers. The process should be, right, take away all access and now fire. Which sounds a bit brutal, but you're protecting the organisation. So if you do something against the procedures as a person, you can also be liable depending on the legislative framework in which you're working. And that's, as I said, why I chose one from America. Because quite often we are dealing not just with a legislative framework in Scotland, but also other legislative frameworks. So if you didn't know, the law in Scotland is different to the law in England and Wales. They are different legislative frameworks. And if you buy something from a supplier in Scotland, the rules might be different from buying from a supplier in England. And they're certainly different to buying from a supplier in France, particularly now, with the change in EU status. What I'm saying is you have to not only conform to the rules of where you are, you have to conform to the rules of anywhere your organization might be and any organizations with which you deal. You'll see it quite often in contracts if you're dealing with a big company. They'll say things like, any challenge to this contract will be heard in the County Court of Lubbock, Texas. And that's part of what you sign up to as part of your deal, as part of your procurement. And, you know, nobody reads it. When was the last time you read the terms and conditions when you bought something? And that's fine if what you're buying is an MP3 off of Amazon. But if what you're buying is a computer system from Lubbock, Texas, something goes wrong with that computer system. And in your contract, it says you have to sue them in Texas, in Lubbock. Well, how much is that going to cost you? How much do you know about suing people in America? How much are American lawyers going to cost? And let's not beat about the bush. How sympathetic is a jury in Lubbock, Texas going to be to a company from another country? So you need to be really careful with what you're doing, not just with legislation here, but with legislation around the world. So let me give you a specific example here of what can go wrong if we don't put these kind of GRC measures into place and don't take them seriously. So I've just promoted you. You've become the director of a company. Congratulations. In fact, it's a really big company. It's got hundreds of locations, thousands of employees, millions of pounds in turnover. And you're the director of that company. You're overall responsible for that company. Keep track. How do you keep track of all those locations, all those people, all that money? Clearly, you can't do everything yourself. You have to rely on people. You have to have reporting systems in place. You have to get information from those systems. And you have to trust that the people that put the information into those systems is putting it in correctly and interpreting it properly. Because what will happen if it's not? And I can give you a specific example. Have any of you ever had, any of you heard of Patisserie Valerie? You might have had a cup of tea and a cake in one of their shops. So before I do this, and because I know it's been recorded, I will say that all of the following is alleged, and that there is ongoing prosecutions. But I'll give you an outline of what happened at Patisserie Valerie. Long story short, it went bankrupt. The chair was a guy called Luke Johnson, and it went bankrupt under his watch. And what he said was he had been told that the company, in essence, had lots of money and was absolutely fine. And that was incorrect. It was incorrect, in fact, according to The Guardian, to the tune of £94 million. So how can that possibly happen? Particularly as a public company, and in common with every large organisation, the company was audited by accountants. In this particular case, a company called Grant Thornton, who are a huge accounting company. And one of the things that you get in auditors for, one of the reasons you pay them lots and lots of money, is so that they'll go through your accounts with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything's okay. In this particular case, it wasn't. So why? How can that possibly happen? Well, the chair blamed his financial director for giving him the wrong information. He said he'd been told that, bottom line, he'd been told that the company had money when it didn't, which is a fairly big error to make. So the directors received these reports about how well the business was doing. And remember, the directors are responsible for the governance of the organisation. And I'll use the term misstated for the amount of money that the business had. And the reason that happened, according to Luke Johnson, is that one person, specifically the financial director, had complete control. So no one else checked it. No one else was also responsible for signing it off. And to many of you, this might seem unbelievable. I mean, I used to be the treasurer of my local judo club when my son did judo. And every check that we wrote had to have 2 signatures just to make sure we weren't spending money incorrectly. But it appears that this large company had one person who was in control over the financial statements and could do anything they wanted with it. In the same way, the organisation I spoke about earlier had one person on the end of the phone who could change account numbers and no one else checked. So the people who were responsible for governance did not put in the right procedures. They allowed one person to have control over the money. I think we can agree that's quite a risk. And so the company failed in its financial requirements. It didn't comply to the law. There was a failure in governance because a risk wasn't identified and dealt with, which led to the organisation failing in its legislative compliance. Which leads me to one of the things I wanted to say. These, even though we keep saying governance and risk and compliance, these are not separate things. These are intertwined. We'll talk more about how they're intertwined later. But you can't have governance on its own or risk management on its own. They all work together to ensure that the organisation works well. And as I say, we'll talk more about that in the weeks to come. So that's what the module's about. That's what we'll be talking about, and we'll be talking about how we might go about setting up those things. Does anyone have any questions about that just now? No? Okay. In that case, I am conscious that it's hard concentrating in a classroom. It's even harder concentrating online. So can I encourage you to stand up, walk about, get yourself a drink, do whatever you want to do, and we will continue in, well, I was going to say 5 minutes, but we're down to 4 minutes and 39 seconds. Okay, take a wee break and we'll be back in just over 4 minutes. Okay, and we are back. Cheers. Okay, so that's the overview of GRC. Has anyone thought of any questions while we've taken our wee break? Anything that you want to ask before we move on? Okay, so you'll definitely want to know how we're going to assess this. So I'll do that, but first of all, can I take you through some of the practicalities for the module? Now, you should all by now have been enrolled, and if not, we need to get that done sooner rather than later. That should give you access to the systems, and I did send out an email with links to all those systems. So this is the first one here. This is actually change it because it looks very different to you than it does to me. So I will pretend I'm a student. This is our VLE called Moodle, and this is where you will submit your assessment. So there's very little in here. There is just some information, some links to the materials, link to the Teams meeting, and a link for the assessment submission when we get there. Okay, so it's very small because the module materials themselves are all in something called a Onenote document. So just using your reactions on Teams, quick thumbs up for people that know about Onenote. Thanks, Nicola. I think you're the only one. There's actually see on the Teams interface, you can actually give virtual thumbs up like that. Or if you particularly enjoy what I'm saying, you can give me some applause. I'm not forcing you. I'm not suggesting these things. Thanks, Megan. So that's one system. So if you don't know OneNote is basically Microsoft Word on steroids. So it's a place that all your documents can be stored. But as well as documents, there are PowerPoints, spreadsheets, YouTube videos. All the materials are in this OneNote document. Now, I've shown it here because this is OneNote on the desktop. And if you don't know, as a UWS student, you have access to all of the Microsoft Office suite. So you can download all of these things. You can see I've got loads of notebooks open on my system. But what I wanted to show you was, this is your notebook for the module. It has different sections: introduction, assessment. Not surprisingly, governance, risk, compliance all make an appearance in there. So you can choose different sections, and within the sections there are different pages. Okay, so there's information on the system, on the module itself. So all your module information is in here, including links to the YouTube channel where you're going to find your videos. And in fact, videos from previous years are already available. The lecture that I just gave is in there. So all the lectures that we're going to do are all in this OneNote document as well, albeit it will take a while to catch up. And information on the syllabus. So what we're going to do when. So here is the list. So you can see here's the 15th and it's the introduction week. And you can see that I've split up the weeks into governance, risk, a couple of things called ITIL and COBIT. Then we'll do compliance, control. Then we've got a week that I've labelled student-led revision. That's basically can you go back to and cover this because I didn't quite get it first time? All leading up to an assessment being due at the end of November. Now, I have a question for you. And I don't need an answer right now, but I do want you to think about it. There is only one assessment for this, so it's a report, and I'll cover what that report is. But when I do, I want you to decide whether you want to submit the report as one document, or whether you think it would be helpful to submit it in stages. In previous years when I've done this, well, let me explain what's happened and what can be a problem with assessments. Hopefully you will be able to hear this. So shout if you can't hear it. Here's a small tale about assessments, because of course assessments are something that you'll be doing all through your career. Assessments come in all shapes, sizes and types. But what never changes is that you want to do your best. You want to come up with the best possible solution, the best possible answer, the best possible response to the question that's posed. The problem is time. Doing something like this takes time. You don't rush it at the last second and hope to get a good result. And with assessments, that can be what happens. You go into them with the best of intentions. You start off thinking about what you would like to be at the end. And you start creating something wonderful, something magical. Then, of course, life, other modules, and everything else intervenes. So what you start with becomes compromised. It becomes less of what you hope to see, until eventually your assessment is not quite the place. Give yourself time. Give yourself all the time you need to create and finish your assessments properly. And don't be left with something like this. So in previous years, that's what's happened. There has been a deadline. People go into it with all the thoughts of drawing the horse, start off wonderfully, and then as deadlines approach, can we say that the quality goes down a little towards the end? And I'm sure some of you know exactly what that's like. So as I say, in previous years, what I've done is had one submission date for the whole assessment. But I'm thinking if it makes sense to you guys that we might have 3 submission dates. So we might have a submission for governance, a submission for risk, and then a final submission where you tie it all together with the compliance stuff as well. But I don't need an answer just now, but please have a think about it and I'll ask you this question next week, okay? Okay, so all your materials are in here. All the stuff is available from day one. So everything that I'm going to cover, all the presentations, all the information, all the links to documents, everything is all there from the start. And I promise you, I know that there is someone from an NHS board, and I promise you that was there before I knew the NHS was joining this class. So all the stuff is there. It's all in different sections with a whole bunch of different pages for all the different things that we're talking about. So feel free to read ahead. In fact, please read ahead. At the very least, please read what we'll be doing next week so that what I'm talking about isn't new to you, and instead what I'm talking about is familiar to you and you're ready to explore it further, ask questions, do whatever you want to do. That's OneNote on the desktop. You can also get OneNote, the web version. And in fact, I have included that for those of you that have joined our team. If you haven't yet, you've had a request to join it. Come on, computer. And I know that not everyone has yet. Make sure you've signed in with your university credentials once you get those, and then you can join our Microsoft team. And part of the reason I'm doing that is I've put all of the materials on this team. So I just showed you the module materials there. On our team, there are tabs up at the top. There are the module materials already in Teams. So it's a central repository for everything. There's specific module materials for this module, albeit loading slowly. I need a new computer. Can I start a GoFundMe for you guys to buy me a new computer? There is general student information for things like referencing and just any sort of admin stuff, plagiarism. One of the things there is legislation materials. So clearly compliance is a key component, is key to legislation. However, I mentioned earlier that this is a part of another course. And people who have done that course are expected to have done legislation before. So here is the information on the legislation that should have been covered before. So for those of you who haven't done this, here's all the information. Now, clearly it's not all legislation because you didn't sign up for a law degree. What it is selected pieces of legislation that you might want to think about, either because they are general and are important to everybody, so regulation of investigatory powers, health and safety, or because they are specific computer things. So when we're talking about the assessment, we're talking about legislation, I don't mean all the legislation in the world. I don't expect you to understand everything. Of course, if there's more than what's here, feel free to add it. But I am expecting you to certainly talk about some of the things in here. That's the legislation materials, there's the student information, there's the module materials, and that Moodle page that I showed you earlier is also available here in case you can't find it. I'll not bother logging in. The other thing it gives us is a place to discuss things. Now, you can email me, and if I have the chance, I will reply. But the problem with email is, in particular when I have external students, our system quite often identifies your emails as spam, so I might not see them. However, if you put questions in here, and I was really happy to see that some of you have already been on here because I put on a wee introduce yourself thing, it means that it won't get caught up in any spam. I'll see it, and just as importantly, other people will see it. So we'll start to build up a place where questions and answers can be for everybody, rather than 10 emails on the same thing. When is the assessment date? And I have to answer 10 separate emails. So if we can keep it to Teams, that would be fantastic. And I'll monitor Teams, not just today when we have the class, but I'll monitor it over the week. So if you have questions, I'll try and get back to you during that. I don't know what Nicola's eating, but it looks really good. So all of the materials there, everything's available there. And the other thing that I'm going to do, regardless of whether you guys decide to have one big assessment or 3 smaller assessments, making one big one, is I'm going to get you to write stuff regularly. So when we talk about governance, I'm going to get you to start writing it and I'm going to get you to submit it. Now, it won't be a mini test. I'm not going to mark it and tell you off if you get things wrong. It's a way for me to keep track. It's a way for me to know that you're actually doing something, submitting something, and it's a way for you to self-reflect and go, am I actually getting this? Can I do this stuff? So there's nothing there yet because we haven't covered anything yet. But once we start covering things, I'll start putting things on there and I'll be getting you to submit things regularly, no matter which assessment we choose. I personally am all for sugary things. What have I got? I've got my Frutella ready to keep me going because I've run out of my ginger with sugar, which is my favourite. Okay, so you'll start to see all these things going. You'll start to see them all in teams. So if you haven't yet signed up for the team, please do. There'll also, because I think I haven't put it on there, there'll also be a link to the YouTube channels so you can see all the recordings there as well. Okay, I think that's all the admin type stuff that I need to do. Is that okay for everyone before we actually go and talk about the assessment itself? Yep, I'm getting some thumbs up. Good stuff. It's always interesting. I'll not identify him to spare his blushes, but one of the people in the class has signed up to the CPD despite having had me at university, which is, you know, masochism to the nth degree. Actually, choosing to come back after you've escaped from me. So I'm impressed. Lorraine, the assessment details are not in Moodle. The assessment submission is in Moodle, but all the module materials are in the OneNote document, and there's a section there called assessment. So all the information is on OneNote. The submission itself, where you actually upload your final report, is on Moodle. So that sounds like a prompt for me to actually tell you about this stuff. You can see that once again, the presentations are all in there and have been in there. So some of you may already have read this stuff, he says, hopefully. But let's talk about what the assessment is. So it is one big thing. So regardless of whether we split it up to give you 3 submissions, just to stagger it a wee bit, it is one thing and it's a report. Not surprisingly, it's a report about governance, risk and compliance. And the idea is, if you look at OneNote, you'll see that I have given you a case study. Okay, so it's about a small to medium enterprise, what they do, some of the things that happen in there. Not surprisingly, I've identified some issues with that company, some of the issues that you might want to think about in terms of governance, risk and compliance. Let me rephrase that. Things that you will have to think about in terms of governance, risk and compliance if you want to pass. So they're a case study. And what you need to do is you've just been appointed to this company and you're now the group compliance manager. And what I want you to do is write a report to the board of this company. I want you to suggest how they implement governance, risk and compliance in their company. And you'll see in that bullet point to list some things that absolutely positively have to be in there, like a governance framework, like risks that exist and a complete risk register, any legislative issues that are in there. Now, I've said before that this is a split class, so I've also said for the people taking cyber security that you should focus on IT issues. For those of you on the CPD course, you don't have to. I'm not entirely sure your background, and I'm hoping to find that out as we go on. But if IT isn't your background, you might want to focus on other things. Regardless, you have to do all these things. Now, this is a case study for the final report, yes. Sorry, that was a question in the comments. So what I'm going to get you to do is create that report, but I'm going to get you to create it in a specific way, which is to say people on the board, people that make decisions aren't that bright. They want you to tell them what to do. So I'm not going to give you an example report, because what I tend to find is if I give you an example report, I get 20 reports that look exactly like the example report. So I'm not going to give you that, but what I'm going to do is show you one of the documents, and again, it's in the module materials, and it's from a local authority. Now, you'll find that I use a lot of documents from local authorities, health boards, integrated joint boards, basically public bodies, because they have to make these documents public. So it's a great place for me to show you example documents. It's a lot harder for me to phone up ICI and say, please give me your board documents. They won't do it. But when I'm talking about wrong screen. When I'm talking about this bit here, so I'm saying you should create appendices. So there's recommendations and there's appendices. And what I'm talking about is the sort of thing that you see in these types of reports. So in this case, it's for a council. Now, we've been talking about a board up until now. For a council, the board is the councillors. So this is a report to councillors. And you'll see that the first thing it does is said what they're going to do and what the recommendations are. In other words, I'm employing you as a governance, risk and compliance manager. I expect you to know your job. So here's the first thing I want you to do. Tell me what we should do. And that's what this bit is. Suggest the strategy. But you need to support that. Now, I've called it appendices here. You need to support why you've made the recommendations that you have. So again, you'll see in this, there's recommendations, but there's information about it. Why you've chosen particular things, the reason for it, potential foundational documents that you're using for it. So when I'm talking here about a report that has the suggested framework and then the appendices, the suggested framework is what you think should happen in this company. And the appendices should be enough for the board of directors to go away and read those and understand why you've made those recommendations, why you've done what you've done. So if they don't understand why you have recommended that you implement a firewall for your computer system, they should be able to go and find a section somewhere in your report that says, because of the risk of breaches to our systems, and because the current system has an unfiltered internet access, it is important that we silo off our internal systems from external facing systems. We need a firewall. So anybody who reads the recommendations, install the firewall, can go to that different part of the report and say, oh, here's why we need the firewall. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Is that okay so far? Does that make sense for you? You've all gone very quiet.
One question, sir. Do we have to make the appendices come immediately after the recommendation, or can be anywhere in the document?
It's a very good question, and it goes back to what I was saying about not giving you a sample document. So I will leave it up to you to decide which is easier for people to understand. So in other words, I want you to make the best document you can. So if you decide that it's a separate appendix, go for it. If you decide that it's right beside the recommendation, do that. I'm not going to prescribe what you should do. I just want to get a good document at the end. That makes sense?
Yes.
Any other questions just now? A hand went
Sorry,
up.
Tony.
And then, yep.
Sorry, Tony Zelko. Is there a word count for this?
So again, there is no word count. And it's the same sort of reason. And it says at the bottom, there is no required word count. And it's the same reason I don't give you an example report. I expect you to use your professional judgment. You're all big boys and girls now. You should be doing this in the way that you think is correct. So there's no word count. There's no, if you don't reach this, you fail. But there, oh, thank you. E-service. So there is no word count, but as a guide, I would be stunned if you could do everything that you need to do in fewer than 10,000 words. Okay, if you can, fantastic. But if you're the kind of person who thinks, oh, is this enough? Then I would imagine that at least 10,000 words is what you're going to be aiming for. Okay? Yep, okay. Okay, so one final caveat, particularly important to those of you who are not on the academic track, you do still need to submit an academic report. In other words, it has to be properly referenced. I'm aware that not everyone has that in their toolkit, so I'm happy to answer questions about it. But before I answer questions, you should note that there's a whole big section on referencing in the student information document that I've supplied to you. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of information on referencing. So have a read at that first, but I'm, of course, more than happy to answer questions after that. What you will find useful is this marking scheme. So I've divided up what I'm expecting to see in this report, and that will give you hopefully a good idea of what to put in there. And you can see that it follows, not surprisingly, the sorts of things that we're doing. So there's governance, risk management, a risk register, compliance, ITIL and COBIT, controls, codes of conduct, legislation, and then a final bit for academic referencing that I've just spoken about, and also a kind of nebulous thing called a professionally presented report. Clearly that's going to be subjective, but it basically means, if this was real life, would you be happy submitting this? And I'll make a judgment on that. Final bit on the assessment, I think, is this bit here. So particularly when there's so many CPD people, but also I'm aware that some of the MSc candidates come from outside organisations. If you do not want to use the case study, in other words, if you want to write your assessment based on your current employment, I'm happy to facilitate that as well. The only thing that I ask for is a 2-page proposal that says how what you do can be covered, can cover the materials that we have in here. In essence, if you're doing it on your own organisation, can you also fulfil this marking scheme? I won't hold you to it, and I'm certainly not going to make you do it right this second, but just again by thumbs up or whatever, would that be useful to anyone to do it on their own employment rather than doing it on the case study? No, nobody seems keen. That's fine. If you change your mind, talk to me. Okay, so one report for the whole thing is based on the case study or your own work. And I would heartily suggest that you start work on this report now. Well, probably not now because we haven't really done any of the materials, but certainly starting next week when we do. In other words, don't wait until November and then start writing a report, because then you end up with that horse that you saw that starts off really well and then tails off towards the end. Write it as you go along so that as we are covering governance, you have created the part of the report that goes along with governance. And as we're covering risk, you've written the report that, the part of the report that covers risk and so on. It's out of 100, the pass mark is 50% for this module. For those of you that have been at UWS before, the pass mark goes up for MSCs. So, as I said, all the information's on the OneNote document. Please make sure you've read it. Please make sure you've read the module descriptor to give you an idea of the sort of things I'm looking for. Look at the learning outcomes. So the sort of things that you're supposed to be able to do after you finish this module, and that will help you to create your report. So everything's there, and you have to take everything. Please turn up to these. It's only 2. Oh, Huzafa, sorry. I'm not even sure if I pronounced that correctly. You can tell me off
Yeah,
now.
so you're pronouncing correctly. Actually, sir, can you please place this case study on our team in here, because we few of students can't access our modules, so it will be easy for us to work on right now.
It's not on Moodle, so to say there's nothing on Moodle really other than the submission. There is a link to it on Moodle, but there's also, if you're on Teams, it's in the module materials in Teams, because the OneNote document's in there.
Sorry, Tony, but we can't access right now because we are not enrolled.
Oh, you're not enrolled yet?
No.
Okay, in that case, let me just do something and I'll get you to check it right now. So in the chat, I am just putting a link. Now the link should be available to everyone. So if you haven't got access to the stuff yet, can you just click on that link and make sure that you can see the materials? that should pop up, excuse me, the browser version of this document. Megan? Oh, Megan's got a hand down.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say thank you for putting that in. My work's IT system actually doesn't allow me to join IT. I am join Teams groups outside of our organisation.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
link does work.
Right, okay.
Sorry, we can't access.
You can't access that link? Oh,
Yeah, because it's on a SharePoint, and we can't access.
but it's just a web link. It should just open in a web browser. So if I,
It's actually it needs login, so that's why maybe.
no, I'd set it up so that it didn't need a login. I specifically set it up to not have, just because of these kind of things that we're talking about. I'd set it up so that anybody who has the link should be able to open it.
No login is required. It's open as a web page.
So will open for some people without a login, but not others. Is it, Huzafa, are you physically
No, sir, I
located?
can't access because it's on a Microsoft. It needs a login on a Microsoft. So it needs our UWS email address, our banner ID. So there's actually that a problem. Okay, we can't access our accounts.
That's what I'm saying. I thought I had set this up. I'm pretty certain I'd set this up to be available to anybody without a login. So let me just check that. In fact, it is. So see up there, I haven't logged in. I deliberately don't log. I've got different browsers running. This is the one I use for lectures, and you'll see I'm not logged in. This has just opened on its own. Is it possibly where you are located? Is it a firewall thing? Is it an occupational bad link thing? Are you in an office? Or are you at home? Or
I'm at home.
you're at home, you still can't see it. So you can't just put that into your browser and see something like that. Can other people try that for me, please? Just to.
Yes, I'm having a similar problem with Huzifa, and when I put it in my browser, it just shows, please fill out the form. Please fill out the form to indicate that you have read and understood and agreed to the university and modules, rules, and regulations. So when I try to agree with that, I need to sign in via my university account, not a personal account.
Right. Okay. So, right. So that's exactly what's here. If you see that, that's exactly what's here. So even if you can't fill in the form, that's fine. You can still access the other information. So go down to different pages and you'll get the other information.
Okay.
You don't actually have to fill in that form if you're not logged in yet.
All right. I get it now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm able to access. Yes, I'm able to access it now.
Okay. Huzafa, how about you? Can you do that as well? Or are you still having problems? Or is there anyone else having problems?
I'm trying, but still I can't. I will try. So I will let you know.
Okay, what we'll do is we'll continue doing what we're doing just now, and I'll hang about after this for anybody who can't access the materials, okay? But hopefully you can, and hopefully you can find the assessment in there. So those links are also in the emails that I sent you. So that's just the same link in the email, both for the module materials and the student information. So you should be able to get them elsewhere as well. But if you can't, don't worry, I'll send them out to you again.
I got it. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so please turn up to these. I know that it's sometimes life gets in the way, and I will record them for that reason, but please turn up on time, because otherwise you miss stuff. Because you'll notice that I said an awful lot more than what was on the slides. So if you're just looking at the slides, if you're just looking at those rather than hearing what I'm saying, you're going to miss out on stuff. Similarly, there is a lot of stuff on the module materials that I may or may not cover in the lecture. There are lots and lots of documents, links, information, and clearly I can't cover all of this in a 2-hour lecture. But all of this stuff in here is all examinable, and I'll be expecting you to read all that and understand it as well. And of course, if you don't understand anything, just ask. That's why I'm here, that's why they pay me. Just ask the question, preferably at the time, or certainly before the following week's lecture. Please don't postpone it until, you know, a month afterwards. And what we'll do, I realise this lecture is going on for a while. Normally they won't go on this long. So what there'll be is some information and then what I'm calling a tutorial. So it'll be for you, for any questions that you have, any ways that you want to approach your assessment, anything you've not understood, any of that kind of stuff. Okay. And we can talk about that in detail. Okay, any questions about the assessment? No. As I say, I'm really cognizant that I've got 2 different cohorts. So if I concentrate too much on one or the other, please just let me know. Because I do have to talk about some of the academic stuff for the people that are taking their MSc, and I'm aware that's probably a bit dull for those who are external. Can the appendices be a document you are relating to? Absolutely, you don't have to. If it's another document, you wouldn't include it, but you would say, see this document. And of course, that is part of referencing. And it's basically saying, here's another document, here's the main bit, and if you want to see it, go to the document or the book or the web page or wherever you've got that information from, and you can link to it within your document. Links in an academic sense are called references, if you haven't come across them before. So all the stuff is in there, including how to reference, how to set them out. And what I would definitely recommend is using this tool. If you're working in the university systems, it's already installed. If you're working at home, it's free, so you can install this into your browser, and any time you see something that you want to put into your document and reference, you can add it to this tool called Mendeley. And then at the end, it will go away and create references for you. So eventually at the end, it will insert them into your document in the way that UWS want. Because I'll tell you something that I keep saying it's a secret. It's not really a secret. I hate referencing. I really despise referencing. The fact that there are all these different styles of referencing. Do you put the name of the document in bold or italic or underline? Do you put the date before or after it? Do you put the authors? Do you put them all in, or do you just put the first author? Which bits are italicized? I literally just can't keep up. So I love this tool because all I do is I point it at the thing that I am referencing. It stores it and it creates the reference in exactly the right format for what we need. Life's too short to start wondering about which parts are italicized and which parts are bold and all that kind of stuff. So this is a really, really good tool and I would absolutely recommend it. Any other questions just now? So that was can the appendices be a document? Yes, they can. How do you add what, Lorraine? This Mendeley thing? Yeah, so on this document, it takes you through how to install Mendeley. So I've made a wee tutorial here. In essence, you go to the Mendeley extension. So I've done it for Chrome, but I think it's available for others. It's definitely available for Edge, and I'm almost certain it's available for Firefox. But I've given you the Chrome example. You go there, you install it. Do you know something? Let me just show you. It would be easier. So give me a second here till I get my Chrome browser up. Told you this computer was slow. I'm just opening another browser because, as I say, this one that you're seeing is Firefox. And what I do is I deliberately put all the stuff that I'm doing for classes in Firefox so that I don't accidentally show you all my personal emails, because I've managed to do that before. So I'm opening up the one that I use all the time, which is Chrome, and I'm just going to try and not show you all my computer is going very slow. So while that's doing, is there any other questions while that's loading up? Can you do the assessments in a group? No, these are individual assessments, Rosaline. Any other questions?
Can we do the citation through Zotero, please?
Yes, you can, definitely. If that's what you prefer, feel free, definitely.
Thank you.
And if you don't know what Zotero is, don't worry about it, because you don't have to. But if Zotero is your preferred tool, and it is a good tool, yes, absolutely. All I'm doing is giving you an option. But yeah, it's absolutely up to you. All I'm asking is it's referenced. Okay, so I've got a Chrome browser on here. And should have Mendeley installed somewhere. Nope, I've managed to disable it. That's why it wasn't showing. Okay, so there's Mendeley. And you can see it up there. Albeit slowly. I'm going to go to something called Google Scholar, which is where you can find academic references. It's almost like having Teams, Firefox, Chrome, OneNote, Edge, and PowerPoint all open at once isn't a good idea.
It definitely not.
And why not? I'll just find one of my own. So there's one of my articles. What I can do is I can click the Mendeley button. You do have to sign in, but it's free. Even if you don't have your university account yet, you can create a Mendeley account that's not linked to a university. You can create a personal account as well. Okay, so I have signed in. There's the journal article there. I can add it to Mendeley. So I'll go back here. I've installed the button. I have added to Mendeley. I can now go look at my library. I can choose which ones I want. As I say, this can be anything. So it can be a website, a journal, a book. And if you want to do a book, find it on Amazon or find it on the university library page. And that means you can cite the book without having to start setting up your references. Okay, so I've got my stuff there. Come on. Oh, it's so slow. Now would be the time if anybody wants to sing, tell a joke, maybe do some close-up magic. I'm easy. Megan's going to make that pencil disappear in a second now. Impressive. Right, this isn't going to do it simply because it's so slow, so I'm not going to keep you. So you can see that I've found something, I've added it. You can then choose which references you want to cite, choose the correct reference style, which for us is Cite Them Right 10th edition. And then you can insert the citation. And the reason I'm not going to do this is to do it, I would have to start up Microsoft Word, because that's where these couple of screens come from. I would have to start up Word and do it, and I just don't think my computer can take yet another application. Have a play with it, and if you have questions, we can cover it next week, because I'm really conscious of the time. Suzanne's already having to go. I know what it's like having back-to-back meetings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording of this one just now.